Welcome to the AI Applied Podcast. I'm your host, Connor Grennan.
And I'm your host, Jaden Schaefer. Every week, we break down the latest in AI news, tools, interviews, and discuss how to apply AI into your career and life.
Hey, Jaden, I am super excited. This was a week to end all weeks. We've had like 3 or 4 of these weeks, which have been unbelievable. Today, I want to talk about ChatGPT, OpenAI. Are we good with just laser focusing on that?
Yeah, it's been an insane week, I think, for this topic. So I think there's so much going on. That's a great idea.
Yeah, listen, I mean, here's the thing. So obviously, we had the dev day, we had all that stuff. We had Logan Kilpatrick from OpenAI on. I thought he was phenomenal, especially because he gave us a sense of what developers were looking at. But, Jaden, you and I are huge OpenAI fans. I think a lot of people listening are too. Obviously, the ChatGPT 4 Turbo, which is, faster and better. The context window, I think, is huge. We can kind of go into that about, where does that even sort of allow people to even leave OpenAI? Like, what's the reason behind that? All that kind of stuff. So maybe we just start there for a second. On the context window, it's so big, it's so huge, and it's even reading it better. One of my things around Claude is that I love Claude. I know a lot of people who just absolutely love Anthropic's Claude. Sometimes when I put in something really, really big, it tends to read the beginning and end better than it reads the middle. Curious to see how ChatGPT does this. But most of all, I kept hearing people saying, hey, if you have something really big, go over to Claude. Where does that leave Anthropic and Claude, Jaden?
Yeah, I mean, I was the biggest proponent of that. I used Claude, but it's sad to say I feel like I used it out of necessity, not because I loved it. Not to say it's not good. They're doing good things and it's a great model. I was impressed with the content, but it was whenever ChatGPT would be like, sorry, this is too long. I'm like, okay, go over to Poe, throw it in Claude, get it. And I'm like, cool. I think that the reason why ChatGPT did it, obviously, is because of that. The reason why it wasn't like that out of the box is because it's just incredibly expensive.
Yeah, it's expensive, right?
Throwing that much content in there, they got to read through it all. It's just way more compute, and they were trying to get away with being a little I don't want to say stingy, but that was the goal. And then of course Anthropic sees as an opportunity, says, hey, look, we're going to have a way bigger window. And I think to Anthropic's credit, I think this was a really good move. They did it at a good time, and they got a lot of people to try out their model that might not have otherwise. I think that's really the name of the game in AI right now is, there's so much competition, and of course OpenAI has the most money. So everyone's kind of pushing for their advantage. Everyone's trying to figure out where they can fit into this grand scheme of things. And that was Anthropic's I think where they fit for a while. Now it's going to be a little bit more difficult. So as far as where Anthropic's at, they have branded themselves as the safe AI, the good AI. And I've looked at some things Anthropic's big thing is that they have constitutional AI. And I like the concept, but I think they have to go a lot further with it. They have kind of the idea of where they want to bring Anthropic's Claude in the future. But I think it needs to be in reality, I need to be able to make my own constitution for my own AI before I'm going to be really excited about that versus just using ChatGPT, which is good, mass market, and has a million features, and it's constantly evolving.
Yeah, gosh, that's a good point. I hadn't really thought about that. I mean, because with the constitutional sort of model over human feedback, I love the values of its build itself as this more ethical approach to it. But you're right. I mean, people sort of want a personalized thing, number one. But number two, the big question, Jaden, is that this is a market, right? I mean, this is not a copyright issue where we're going to fall into legal, gray areas where it's well, can we actually use Midjourney, which could be trained on copyright, over Adobe, which says it's not trained on copyright, et cetera, et cetera. So if this is just a market play, are people actually going to care that it's kind of a quote unquote more ethically trained model? I am not yet convinced of that. Now, let's think kind of back to the 50s and 60s when people didn't care about green, except for the hippies. And now it's this huge play. And now people actually buy things because they're, organic or green or more environmentally conscious. So maybe we're too early in that cycle. But that's one thing. Now, the other thing on Claude is that I have heard a couple of people that I really trust over the last week or so say they actually prefer Claude. They think it captures their voice better. So, and look, Jade, I mean, all these AI rappers that, were built, and all of a sudden ChatGPT, or rather OpenAI, just kind of mowed them down. I'm not trying to make light of it. It's just like, holy cow, it felt like a little bit of a bloodbath, but also those were just like little tiny wrappers. Like, we're going to read a PDF or something like that. With something like Anthropic and Claude, the big investors to the tune of billions are things like, right, Amazon, Google. These are not organizations that are just like, this seems cool, let's invest $4 billion in. So they must see something in Anthropic and Claude. Do you think they're hedging their bets, or is there something about Claude that you think is going to be coming down the pike?
Okay, so like, here's where I think Claude can win. And if anyone from Anthropic is listening, this is where I think you can win. I've talked to a lot of people, and this is how I think they can do it. OpenAI is going to be the most mass market. They have the most money. I know Anthropic's catching up with funding, but like, they've had the money from the beginning of the year. Anthropic's catching up, right? So it is what it is. Now, the way they can win, I think, is rolling out constitutional AIs to people on a personal level. Because, like, and for those that don't know what it is, essentially Anthropic's thing is they build AIs that have a clear written constitution. Like, so you pretty much, that's the model weights, or the biases that go into the model. Are like clear and outlined, and you know exactly what they are. They're like, we believe in XYZ, and those things get trained into the model. Now, the thing that people hate about OpenAI is, they're like, well, it's like a black box. We don't know like what the bias is, or the whether I like them or not, whatever, right? And I think it's not like people don't like what you could call quote unquote biases, because another word for biases is, people say bias like it's a bad thing, but biases are your beliefs and they're your values, right? Those are your biases. So I have no problem with, let's say, a bias in a model, as long as it's my beliefs. I don't want OpenAI's beliefs in the model, and I don't want Anthropic's even beliefs in the model. I don't want anyone else's beliefs in the model. I just want my own. And if they can roll out the constitutional concept on a personal level, so I can go and use Anthropic and say, here's like 50 things I believe to be true and I believe in, whether they're right or wrong. And like, this isn't for Anthropic to tell me what's right or wrong. That's kind of what I hate about sometimes when you use some of these AI models, like OpenAI notably, and you say, hey, can you do X, Y, and Z? And it's like, sorry, I'm a large language model. This is where Elon Musk is going with Grok. You can ask it to make the recipe for cocaine and it will tell it to you. And a lot of people think that's wrong. And some people think it should be able to do that. That's not for OpenAI to decide, in my opinion. Like, just let the people use it. It's the internet. It should be free. So in my like libertarian mindset of things, sometimes that's where I lean towards. And I think that's where Anthropic can win if they want to be viable. Make constitutional AIs on a personal level for people, no matter what your beliefs are. And you put in your beliefs, it's going to have biases based on your beliefs. I would be much happier using that than a black box where it has the beliefs, like whether you like beliefs or biases or not, they're in there. But I would rather it be my own personal ones. And I think everyone would prefer that. And I think that's where Anthropic can win.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, like, that's, freedom of thought and freedom of speech, right? Sort of as distasteful as that might be to some people, thinking like, well, it's going to build something like really horrific in there.
Yeah.
Yeah, but that's what they're doing at home anyway, right? In their
Yeah.
conversation. So I agree. I love that. I do want to sort of see where Anthropic and Claude goes. I do think, like in Perplexity, sometimes I'll use Claude, sometimes I'll use GPT. If you have a pro subscription with Perplexity, you can switch between the models, which is very cool. And Claude sometimes gets it right in a way that GPT does not. So I still think Claude is, kind of a 1 and 1A. I don't think that they're so, trailing so far behind. So I love that discussion. The other thing, though, Jaden, we have to get into in this discussion, if we're talking ChatGPT and the new features, are the GPTs. And I've just, even this morning, I was just trying to build one out. It was actually pretty great. I've heard some people saying, oh, it's not that
Yeah,
great.
what was your experience?
So my experience was awesome. I'll just tell you what I did, right? So I'm at the Stern School of Business. I'm in the Office of Student Engagement. And so we have a team, but we always have sort of, a pretty in-depth user manual for onboarding new administrative aides, right? If this happens, this happens. We deal with all co-curricular things with MBA students, anything that's not academic or career, essentially, right? But there's just a ton with that when you have hundreds and hundreds of students. And so in the past, what it is somebody would get that user manual and they'd flip through it, like literally flip through it if, oh, we need to get somebody, name tags or whatever, or we need to book a room for events. If they didn't understand something, they'd go to one of our teammates. And that just takes a lot of time. So I built this thing out. So full disclosure, I first tried to upload a PDF. It didn't upload, but I checked in with a couple of friends. People said, no, that's not normal. It should. I was like, okay, there's a little glitch right now. But what I did, which I thought was pretty cool, was because now the big context window, I took the 30 pages and just dumped the 30 pages in. I'm like, all right, can you read this? And it's like, yeah, I can read that. By the way, it's super user friendly in terms of Now I'm going to ask you this. What do you think of this? Now I'm going to ask you this. And it was like, create a logo. I'm like, I don't want that. I want it more purple. It's like, okay. So it was like, what do you want the tone to be? So it talks you through. You don't have to figure anything else out. But even when I dumped in 30 pages, it basically made it into a text file, which is really cool. I tested it out. It was outstanding. It's pretty slow right now, but the idea just there was outstanding. I don't know if you've had any experience with it yet.
Yeah, I mean, I've looked at it briefly, haven't built anything out too crazy yet, and I've seen a million demos. I got to give you a big kudos, Connor, because I think you were right about something that I didn't. I didn't even always agree with you. I've heard you say it before. I'm like, I'll just let him think it. But I think you're right about something, and that is, I've heard you say before, like, hey, you don't need to be like a prompt engineer. I never teach prompt engineering because of, I can't even remember all of your reasoning, but I think you're right about it. I recently just saw a project using the GPT store where essentially what someone did is he's a prompt engineer guy. And over the last year, he's built over 10,000 prompts. And a lot of them specifically are for Midjourney and image creation. He built a GPT on the GPT store called Midjourney Prompt Creator. And he dumped in his entire list of 10,000 prompts. And now you just tell it, hey, give me a Midjourney prompt for X, Y, and Z thing. And based off of everything that's in there, it's going to come out with one. And he posted, he had a video of him pasting those into Midjourney, and it was making amazing Midjourney prompts. So the whole, like, someone has to be the prompt engineer. Like, someone had to put that content in there, and he hasn't discovered everything. There's going to be a million things. The models are always advancing. Someone has to do it, but not everyone has to be able to do it. There's going to be the tools that help bridge the gap. Someone has to figure it out, but then once it's been figured out, the tools will be built. So I think it's a very interesting area, and I think you did nail that one.
Oh, yeah. Listen, high praise, high praise. And look, part of it is just kind of to your point, right? I mean, it's going to get, first of all, ChatGPT is going to get better at divining what you want, number one. But number two, on the prompting, I think that's true. But here's the other thing that I'm seeing, kind of to your point, right? Is that other people are building this out. This isn't just about you build out your own GPT, right? This is about seeing what other people are building out, which is going to happen when it hits the store, and there's going to be a bazillion of them already. But I don't know if you've messed around with this, but even right now, ChatGPT has built out a bunch of prompts or GPTs on their own, right? Kind of like starter ones. And even with that, Jaden, this is sort of the other soapbox that I get on. We've talked about this before a lot too. Why is ChatGPT sort of hard to use, right? It's because it's kind of like electricity, right? You rip the user interface off, you're like, do it for anything. Whereas, if you said, hey, this is a phenomenal tool for writing emails, people be like, oh, great. Well, that's what they're already doing. If you go on there, I've tested them out a little bit. They have these GPTs. So instead of the starter questions like, well, do you want a recipe for Thai chicken, or do you want to dig a hole? Right? It's like neither one, right? But now what they have is like, the negotiator, and we're going to help you negotiate. Another one they have is like magic coloring book. If you want a coloring book, another one they have is like, if you, and I'm like, wait, what is this? So I started clicking on those, and it's amazing because now instead of being like, well, I got to negotiate, how should I prompt it? What should I say? Now you just go to the negotiator. It's like, hey, I'm here. And obviously whoever at OpenAI is great at prompting wrote the prompt. So I just did one for the magic coloring book. I'm like, wait, what? I'm like, hey, we have this Bernedoodle named Tully. And because it has DALL-E, it created a coloring book around DALL-E. So I'm like, to me, this is really the future. It is putting it into tighter user interfaces. So instead of just saying, guys, use ChatGPT, you can ask it anything in the world. And instead saying, what do you want? Search for it and find it.
Yep. And I think OpenAI 100% is going in the right direction. And I will be the first to say, I don't know if the GPT store is going to be a big hit. I know that might sound controversial because I think they're going in the right direction with it. The reason being their plugin store was a bit of a flop. Depending on how they pull off the GPT store, I think depends on a lot of its success. But here's what they did get right, and they got right that people want the tighter user interface and they want to use individual tools. Now, we obviously are big on AI, and probably a lot of people that are listening are like, AI is everything. So we're like, this is how the world's going to go. How the world will probably go, because of how the world is currently going, is that people are going to, because of everything happening in AI, people know the capabilities are there roughly. They don't know necessarily how to always do it, but they're going to go to Google and they're going to search for negotiator AI, or like tool to help me negotiate. They might not even say AI, right? It's going to be probably like a Google search. And if the GPT store is able to rank in Google, I'll be interested because you have to log in to use the tools, I don't know if they will. If they're smart, they'll allow it to be indexed by Google. Regardless of whether they're ranking or not, there's going to be millions of tools built. And I mean, there's already a lot out there, but there will be like whatever's in the GPT store will be standalone apps on standalone websites with a marketing team behind them that's creating content and articles and blog posts and videos that drive traffic. And the concept of the GPT store with the tighter user interface on those tools will be very popular. So I don't know if I don't know if the GPT store is the place that this takes off, but the capabilities that the GPT store enable, that is a popular, that's a winner. That's a product market fit, viral. Everyone will use these tools. I'm not sure 100% where the place is that they will use them, but I think that that's the right direction.
Phenomenal. I love that. I think that's phenomenal. I hadn't even thought of that. Guys, if you are not, again, if you don't have a pro account, you can only use this if you have a pro account, $20 a month. Jaden and I say it every episode, public service announcement, do this. Jaden, I'd say we wrap this up with just a plea for people to use this.
Yeah, it's phenomenal. It'll help you in so many ways. So get on that. But thanks so much for listening. Make sure to rate us wherever you get your podcasts. And I hope you have a fantastic rest of your day.